Hello and welcome to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host Manny Mardiege and today is October 28th, Monday, here to recap what we saw yesterday in Week 8 action, but also preview a little bit of what we're going to see tonight in the preview to Monday Night Football with the Steelers taking on the New York Giants. That's one of the games we'll be talking about today, but also, just a bunch of the recaps from yesterday, looking over Sunday Night Football, the Patriots game, the Browns game, also against the Ravens, and of course, the miracle play in Washington when the Commanders defeated the Chicago Bears. So all of that will be on store for us today on today's episode. Make sure to stick around and watch the entirety of that. But also, before we start, I'd like to remind you guys, if you have any questions or comments, to please use the new Super Chat feature we have available to you guys just by using the new Super Chat button. And by using that, you'll be able to click the $ at the bottom of the chat box to send in your Super Chat. In this way, it guarantees that your message gets on the air, and it's also a fantastic way to support our channel, and we rely on your support to keep bringing you the sports content that you love, and we appreciate every bit of it. So go ahead and let us know what you're thinking and hit that Super Chat button to get involved with the show. Comment, question, opinion you'd like to share on today's show. Just get involved. It always makes it a lot better when you guys are part of the show. And it takes it to a different place, makes it more conversational for anything that I bring up or anything you guys like to talk about. So that'll be that. We'll start off by previewing the Monday Night Football game that we have on tonight. Obviously, the last game of Week 8, the Steelers taking on the New York Giants. The week concludes tonight as Pittsburgh hosts another New York team in Pittsburgh. The 2-5 Giants go to Pittsburgh after a 28-3 loss to the Philadelphia Eagles, while the Steelers try to earn the same result in Russell Wilson's first start last week, trying to get another win in back-to-back weeks against two New York teams. And the Steelers are also, with a win tonight, would go to 6-2 before heading into their bye week next week. And the Jets currently enter as 5.5-point underdogs into this game last time I checked, and with a ton of quarterback questions, or I'd rather say quarterback doubts, I would say. Just quarterback, more questions than answers, really, with Daniel Jones, just because of the fact that they have the 30th ranked offense, and while last game didn't go their way against the Philadelphia Eagles, now they face another tough defense in Pittsburgh's, who is second in takeaways and points allowed. They only come into this game allowing 14.4 points per game, so it'll be a tough task for the Giants, especially because the Giants average about 14 points per game. So those averages match up pretty identical to each other. So it'll be a very good test, one for the Giants, but also you can see why they are underdogs heading into this game. But more so on the Giants and kind of how that Daniel Jones is their starting quarterback. He was, I guess, technically benched for Drew Lock in their last game, but the game was already out of hand. It wasn't a real, sincere, meaningful benching, right? If that makes sense. They just took him out because the game was already pretty much said and done. But with that being the case also, there is a little bit something there, right? It feels like there's just some underlying issue there, it feels like, just because, Daniel Jones, he said, I think, after the game that he didn't like being benched. He didn't like being taken out of the game, regardless of, obviously, the circumstance. So, for the Giants, for head coach Brian Daboll, they wanted to try and avoid that again, and that starts tonight against this very, very highly rated Steelers defense. What better way to make an impact, right? After the game you had last week in New York, to come on the road and make it a game against Pittsburgh. I think because a lot of people are probably already writing off the Giants going into tonight, but what's interesting about them is the fact that the Giants do a lot better at home than they do they do a lot better on the road than they do at home. An interesting note just around this matchup also, Pittsburgh hasn't lost a Monday Night Football game at home since 1991, while Daniel Jones so far this year is only one of 3 quarterbacks with 2+ touchdowns and 100+ quarterback rating in 3 road games. So kind of to show you and emphasize the fact that Daniel Jones, on the road, where games might seem like they're even more against their favor, against the Seahawks, they put up a great game. Also, against the Commanders, their offense played all right. They didn't win that game, but they played a little games, right? It's just, even against the Cleveland Browns, they won that game where I'm sure a lot of people didn't think they would put up much of a fight. Whereas the home games, you look at the 28-6 loss to the Vikings, another home loss to the Cowboys, 20-15, and the latest one being the loss to the Bengals, 17-7. You look at those handful of games, and then compared to the road games, it's almost night and day, but it just feels like Daniel Jones, for whatever reason, plays a lot better on the road. So that is something to watch out for as an interesting note, right? You don't see a lot of teams or quarterbacks specifically that are struggling be better on the road, but we'll see how that pans out in tonight's matchup on the road in Pittsburgh. And for the Steelers, now switching over to them a little bit, on the injury note, there's not going to be any Zach Frazier tonight or Nick Herbig. Zach Frazier is dealing with an ankle injury, the rookie center that has taken over the starting spot for the Steelers. He will not be in action tonight. And same thing for Nick Herbig. He's been dealing with that hamstring injury for a couple of weeks now, and it doesn't look like he'll be able to go. The Steelers expect both of them to come back after their bye week, so the bye week is coming at a great time for them. If they manage to win tonight, heading into the bye 6-2, and then getting Frazier, Nick Herbig bag, Cam Sutton also is coming off of the commissioner's list as well for his suspension. So, they're getting a lot of people back. Hopefully they'll be healthier going forward. But, those are some of the guys inactive tonight. And also Cordell Patterson for the Steelers, I forgot to mention, will not be active tonight. He was questionable going into this game, but ultimately will not be able to make it. And, interesting for the Steelers. It's important for them to get a win tonight, going into that bye week, like I mentioned, and after that bye week too, because the whole talk about the Steelers has been their second half schedule. And with that second half schedule, after their bye week, they're going to play Washington on the road. And then after that Washington game, you could say that their season really starts, because they're going to start playing their divisional games. They haven't played a single one up until this point. And after that, the last 8 weeks of the season, 6 of them are going to be against AFC North opponents. So basically all of those games are going to count very much towards the division, towards the conference, towards seedings and everything. It's important that they get one of these wins before, the real test, the harder tests come after their bye week. And those 2 games that they don't play, the division rivals, they play the Eagles and they play the Chiefs. So you don't really get much of a break. The last 8 weeks for the Steelers are going to be a gauntlet, to say the least, so it is better to just go into the bye week with as much positives as you can and hopefully come out of it a lot more healthy, just to gear up for those last 8 weeks. And for the Giants on the other side, looking at their injuries, I would say some more severe ones for them, certainly, because you have no Andrew Thomas. He's already been ruled out for the year. Jermaine Illuminor, their other tackle, should be good to go tonight. There was some doubts about him potentially being out, but I think he should be healthy enough to go tonight, and they're going to need him against TJ Watt, of course. There was some questions with Dexter Lawrence and Brian Burns, but both of them should be good to go. There was no injury designation for Dexter Lawrence, and he's obviously arguably the biggest piece to their puzzle, leading the league in sacks and just leading their defense overall. And same thing with Brian Burns, coming over from the Panthers, getting that massive contract. He's been a pretty big impact player for them already this year, so he was dealing with some injuries, but he should be good to go tonight. And the Giants, just heading into this game, they're trying to snap a 2-game losing streak. Their last win was at Seattle. Talking about their road success previously, that was their last win. They lead the NFL in sacks, like I mentioned, with Dexter Lawrence leading everybody with 9. So they have some things going for them. Pretty odd, dynamic to this team, right? Because you look at the 2-5 record, you look at Daniel Jones and the questions around him, you might be thinking, what does this team have going for them? And they have a very good defense. Their defensive line's very good. I know Kayvon Thibodeau is not playing, but he just adds to it, and they get after the quarterback. They're doing that part at least, right? So looking at that and taking that into our matchups, with the Steelers not having Zach Frazier tonight and obviously facing Dexter Lawrence, one of the matchups I'm looking at is between Pittsburgh's backup center, Ryan McCollum, and Dexter Lawrence. Really, it won't be a one-on-one matchup. Dexter Lawrence, moves all over the line. And also, if the Steelers are going to have Ryan McCollum one-on-one against Dexter Lawrence, that's a huge problem already. So it's really going to be the entire interior offensive line going up against Dexter. Mason McCormick, the right guard, Isaac Seumalo, the left guard, and Ryan McCollum as well. How much can they negate Dexter Lawrence from taking over the game? Or will Dexter Lawrence have his way with the backup center? And also, I failed to mention the rookie right guard for the Steelers. That'll be a huge matchup, obviously, for the Steelers, who have been running the ball better. They're going to try and keep that going tonight and trying to keep Russell Wilson clean. Not the most mobile quarterback, obviously, so that'll be huge. Also, on the other side, TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith going up against the Giants' offensive tackles, right? Where the Steelers are missing some offensive line pieces, the Giants are as well on the outsides, at least Andrew Thomas, right? So Alex Highsmith should, you would think, have a little bit more success over there. How do they maneuver the protection if Alex Highsmith is getting, in too quickly? Do they move some guys over there? You're not going to not double team TJ, so that's obviously going to affect it. That sort of dynamic, that give or take between the offensive line and trying to block TJ and Alex Highsmith, will be huge in this matchup. And also, a little bit to the first point, Najee Harris against the Giants' entire defensive line. How much can they negate him and force the Steelers to pass a lot more? So with that, the matchups out of the way, lastly, we're just going to get to my prediction here. And I think I'm going to take the Steelers. I like the Steelers in this game just because I know the Giants, the road wins, I should say, at this point. Their overall performance on the road has been pretty encouraging for, a team that I think a lot of people would say is still on the come up. But that offensive line worries me a lot, especially against TJ and Alex. Daniel Jones was sacked 7 times last week. And, the Eagles have a great defense as well. They have great guys on the defensive line. So Alex and TJ on that line, not to mention Cam Heyward as well. How much can that affect the running game? And Malik Nabers was a non-factor last week. I am anticipating he should be a little bit more involved this week. So maybe the Giants try to go quicker, try to get him the ball a lot faster, not having Daniel Jones hold the ball too long. But ultimately, I only think that could get you so far before the Steelers defense, adjusts to that. And then once you start holding the ball a little bit longer, that's when I get nervous. And Daniel Jones has been known for having those turnover problems. So I like the Steelers. I like the way Russ looked last week after kind of shaking off some of the rust. I think he only gets better from here, getting more familiar with his guys, the offensive line, George, all his wide receivers, and, the tight ends and whatnot. I think he gets better. It's good that he has back-to-back home games, and going into the bye, I think this will be a good game for him. So I'll take the Steelers to win. We'll say 27 to 16, I'll say. 27 to 16 will be the final score tonight. Steelers will go to 6-2, and the Giants, unfortunately, will go to 2-6. But that'll be the game on tonight. We're going to recap a lot of the games that we saw yesterday because there was a lot of great games on, starting with the Sunday Night Football game between the Cowboys and the San Francisco 49ers. A close one, but ultimately the Cowboys fall again. What do we say about this Cowboys team now, right, going forward? More on them and the game overall when we come back after our first break.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows where 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. Dip, you choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
We are back now on the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast to give a look at the Sunday Night Football game that we saw last night between the Dallas Cowboys and the San Francisco 49ers. For the fifth time in a row now, the 49ers defeat the Dallas Cowboys, going back to their matchups in 2022. 2021, I believe, is the farthest this streak extends to. And last night, it was another win, obviously, for the 49ers. It was 30-24, and the 49ers go back up to 500 now, going into their bye week at 4-4. And it also stops a two-game home losing streak that the 49ers had going on. And now, like I said, at 4-4, while the Cowboys come off of their bye week and lose their second game in a row, technically. You know, the bye week sandwiched in between their last loss and this loss. Now this is actually their first road loss this year for the Cowboys. All of their losses have, funny enough, been at home. They've actually been all right on the road, but this is their first loss in 2024 away from home. So, looking at this game, the past two seasons, which is pretty curious about the 49ers, heading into their bye, like I mentioned, the past two seasons after they've come off of their bye week, they've gone 16-2 following those byes over the last 2 years. So it's something about that bye week, you know, arguably the best team in the NFL coming off of their bye and just, you know, being rejuvenated. And this year could probably be no different because we're anticipating Christian McCaffrey coming back. I'm sure Juwan Jennings will come back. I'm not sure if Dre Greenlaw will come back yet. He's been out the entire year. I'm not sure if he's quite ready to come back, but we'll see. It should also help guys like Debo get healthier. George, obviously, both of them have been pretty banged up. You also have Jordan Mason. He, you know, was healthy enough to play, but he also didn't finish the game this past week, I guess I should say, like he did in Seattle. You know, he got out of that game, didn't come back. Same story last night. So it should help everybody just try and get better, try and get a little bit healthier going and facing the rest of the year. I think the bye week comes at a great time for the 49ers. And also for Dak Prescott, for the Dallas Cowboys, not another great showing for them because it's the third game in a row, actually, for Dak, throwing 2 interceptions. He's the first Dallas quarterback, to throw for that record in 32 years. The first Dallas quarterback to throw 2 interceptions in 3 straight games for, 32 years, which I think just highlights the trajectory that this Cowboys team is on so far this year, because, those are only some of the stats that we can read off from last night, because it wasn't, the stats are one thing. I'd like to read them out just because it gives you a good idea of what the overall performances were like from some of these players. And on Dak, he had 243 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 25 of 38, which might not suggest an awful night, but once we get into the context of it, it might look a little bit worse. The running game, non-existent again for the Cowboys. There was no Rico Dowdle, so Dalvin Cook actually played in this game for the first time all year. He had 6 carries for 12 yards. Zeke had the most with 10 for 34 yards. He actually scored a touchdown as well. And the receiving, it's not any different. It's a one-man show for Dallas. CeeDee Lamb, 13 receptions, 146 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Insane from CeeDee Lamb, just overall, what he was able to bring. And, it's pretty mind-blowing that they're able to be in these close games. 24-30 does not suggest a blowout by any means. And have CeeDee put up these crazy numbers and still, it feels like it's so far off, but the scores are pretty close and you're only going at it with one guy. Could you imagine if over the offseason, like everybody keeps talking about, if they would have added, I'm not saying Derrick Henry necessarily, but other guys that would have made this team a lot better? It's just so obvious of a neglected issue that at this point, when you have these close games, I can't help not think about, well, what if they just went out and got maybe some more defensive help on the defensive line? They maybe got another cheap receiver out there somewhere, or helped in the running game, maybe bring in a running back. Again, not necessarily Derrick Henry. For whatever reason, they felt like that wasn't gonna fit into their team, or whatever Jerry Jones said ridiculous thing that he said about Derek not fitting their offense. Like, the most egregious thing you could say at this point is say that Derek isn't going to fit your offense, right? The kind of season that he's having compared to the Cowboys is just insane to say. But for the other side of things, the 49ers, they had Brock Purdy throw for 260 yards. He only threw a touchdown. He was 18 of 26. And overall, running-wise, not just Brock Purdy, Isaac Guerrero, and even Jordan Mason, the entire rushing offense for the 49ers had 223 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, and it was Isaac Guerrero, the rookie running back, to lead that group with 14 carries, 85 yards, and a touchdown. Brock Purdy also had a rushing touchdown in this game. And receiving, it was it's been like, I don't know if it's just me or if more people have realized or thought that this has been like a really quiet, exceptional season from George Kittle. I don't know why no one's making more noise about George, but I feel like all his games are like having great numbers, great performances. In this game, he had 6 receptions for 128 yards and a touchdown. It might just be because the 49ers are a little bit, give or take, they're exactly 500 up until this point. But, George, I feel like looking over his last couple games, it's 6 receptions, 128, 6 receptions, 92 yards, 5 for 58, 8 for 64 and a touchdown, and 4 for 45 and a touchdown. He scored at least a touchdown in his recent 5 games except the one against Kansas City. He's been arguably their best offensive player, and I don't know why he's not getting mentioned a little bit more, but, he showed out again last night for the 49ers, and, looking at this game, how it all played out, in just its totality, it was a slow start for both offenses, really. The first half was a little bit dull just because of the fact that it was so low scoring. The defenses really put their mark on the game early on. Dak, threw an interception in his first, or Dallas' second drive of the game. He threw his first interception, just a deep ball to Kevontae Turpin. He tried to get it there, but it was intercepted deep down the field, so it was basically like a punt. Yeah, he probably shouldn't have thrown it to Turpin. If anything, you're going to throw it to CeeDee Lamb. But, it was basically like a punt. I didn't really think too much of it. It didn't directly impact how this game was going to go, per se. So that was the first one. Not as bad as the second one that we're going to get to. But, despite all that, Dallas took a 7-3 lead after Zeke scored a touchdown to start the second quarter. They tacked on a field goal after that in their following drive, so they were up 10-3. Then San Francisco got a field goal also to tag on to their first field goal, and the score was 10-6 at halftime. So, like I said, not the most exciting game in the first half just based on who's playing, but the second half definitely took off for the 49ers because they scored on 3 straight drives, 3 touchdowns, I might add. They scored 3 straight touchdowns from the third quarter and on. And while Dallas, on the other hand, each time the 49ers scored a touchdown, the Cowboys either punted, they punted twice, and Dak threw his second interception of the game. And the second one, I believe, was on their first drive to start the second half. And I don't know, Dak is a very good quarterback, right? He rolled out left, he kind of flipped his hips and tried to throw it sort of disoriented across his body, and well, not across his body, but just rolling left and trying to flip your hips around and try to throw it always makes it a lot tougher, right? So he tried to do that, tried to float it over Diamador Lenore, and it just wasn't high enough or very accurate, so he intercepted it, and that really set the tone for the start of the second half for the 49ers and the Cowboys. Frank Perez says, the New York Giants cover the point tonight, +6, book it. I would not be surprised, honestly. I'm a pretty pessimistic Steelers fan, so I feel like every game it's going to be like low scoring, or the Steelers are just going to be in a game that they shouldn't be. The Cowboys game was the same thing. I was surprised as anybody to see the Cowboys beat the Steelers at home, so I'm a pretty pessimistic fan when it comes to that. I wouldn't be surprised if the Giants cover, because their defense is good. Also, Dallas is bad, is the bad show of the NFL. Yeah. it's pretty remarkable that they're 3-4, honestly, because at 3-4, you look at other teams that are 3-4. It doesn't suggest necessarily that they're awful, but it is pretty remarkable that they have been 3-4 despite how they played and all their deficiencies and anything like that. I don't trust Russell Wilson. I think I've been a little bit more convinced. I would have shared that thought, Frank, but I don't know. He looked pretty good last week. I thought it was going to be really bad last week, so my expectations might have been really low. So I was pretty impressed by him. I thought either he was going to be really bad and the Steelers were going to go to Justin this week against the Giants, or he has 3 touchdowns like he did against a Jets team that now I think we all realize really isn't that great of competition, or that defense really isn't that great. So there is a little bit of a context there, an asterisk, if you will. But, I think he's earned the benefit of the doubt now. It's hard to throw 3 touchdowns and not be trusted. So, we'll ride with Russell Wilson until now. But it is a slippery slope, I will admit that, right? If you're going to go with Russ and really not name him the starter, and then once he plays bad, all these questions come up. That's where I really don't like this give or take with them. He will have 3 interceptions tonight. I don't know about that. If he throws 3 interceptions tonight, it'll be a bad show for me tomorrow. But regardless of the fact here, to just recap here on the Cowboys, it was, the start of the second half really set the tone for everything. After Dak threw his second interception and the Cowboys punted, Dallas then, kind of came to life there late in the fourth quarter. CeeDee Lamb scoring 2 touchdowns, making it 24-30 after the 49ers tacked on another field goal. But the last chance that Dallas got, it led to Dak Prescott just going 3 and out with 3 incompletions, and that was pretty much the game. And the only thing I will say about this game for the Cowboys, because I feel like we've said enough already with how many times we've done this show and how many times we've talked about the Cowboys, is that this is Dallas's 4th game of a matchup decided by 6 points or less. They're 2-2 now with those 4 games. So despite, Frank and I having this conversation about the Cowboys being maybe not as good or potentially one of the worst in the NFL, to have those close games and to be 2-2, I think is still also not that bad. But my issue with the Cowboys is that the margin of error is so small for this team that, again, I do agree that they are very poorly built, bad personnel, bad coaching. They're a one-man show. They're too predictable. All of that. They can't run the ball. They can't stop the run. All of that is true, but still you find yourself in these close games. You find yourself lucky to find yourself in these close games, and you find a way to throw boneheaded interceptions or just have miscommunications on defense or offense or whatever the case may be, and the attitude might not be there, or the mentality, the practices, they've been saying that haven't been as well executed. All of that, you can't have that when you're right on the border of winning and losing. And when you're in these close games, it could make the difference, right? The turnovers and things like that, you can't have that, especially when you're so deficient on all these different areas. So that's my issue really with the Cowboys, that they should not be, 3-4 is not that bad of a record for how everybody describes them, but they just keep shooting themselves in the foot. So maybe if they overcome these turnovers and not just try to get in their way, maybe they could have some more success going forward. But their next couple games are tough: at Atlanta, at home against Philly, at home against Houston, and then at Washington. If they don't stop shooting themselves in the foot, they're probably not going to win any of those games. And then really, we could talk about them like a bottom team, because the record right now doesn't really show it too much, and that could be a little deceiving. So lastly here, Frank, Pittsburgh is not that good. Who have they beat? Off the top of my head, the best team that the Steelers have beaten, that's a great question, honestly, because if I can't give you a straight answer right now, it's probably not anybody. The best one is probably the Falcons. The Falcons or the Chargers, I guess. Those two are the best teams they've beaten. The Jets aren't that good, obviously, now that we know. The Falcons didn't start off great, but they're looking pretty good now. So that's the best, Admittedly, their toughest part of the schedule is coming up, so that's when we'll really measure the Steelers. But if you're going to win these games, you might as well win all the easy ones. So that's where they stand. They have a chance to go to 6-2 before their bye week next week. But for us right now, we're going to head to our next break and also come back and talk about the Jets. Like we just mentioned them a little bit. Their loss to the Patriots cannot be described as anything less than just an embarrassment. So we're going to talk about that, what happened in that game, and just our overall thoughts on the Jets going forward when we return.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Jumping back into the action now on the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast to talk about for all the surprises that we had in Week 8, I think this one really left me disappointed and like a little bit annoyed because of the Jets' loss to the Patriots. And I'm not a Jets fan or anything like that. I've said I'm a Steelers fan, but for the Jets to lose this game, I said it in the segment last week when we talked about the teams that if they lost this past week in Week 8, their season was over. And I mentioned the Jaguars. They lost. Who else did I mention? I mentioned the Titans. They ended up losing, obviously, to the... I can't even remember who they lost to. The Titans, who did the Titans lose? The Lions, a forgettable game. So I mentioned the Titans, the Jaguars, the Dolphins, they lost as well. Even the Saints, they got blown out by the Chargers. And the Raiders also, they lost to the Chiefs. And the Jets were also in there. And of all those teams, I said that the Jets was probably the least likely to lose, and that they had no business losing this game. And for the second matchup between the Jets and the Patriots now, it was very different from, obviously, their first game, right? Knowing what we know now, the Jets won in their first matchup. They now have Devontae Adams. Drake May's now the starting quarterback for the Patriots. And this time they played in New England. So, with all those things being different, of course, the result was different as well, with the Patriots winning this time 25-22. The Jets lose their fifth game in a row, and their last win was, funny enough, against the Patriots, when it looked like at that point that they were turning a corner a little bit. It looked like they were figuring it out after the 49ers game, after the Titans game. It looked like the Jets were kind of, figuring it out with Aaron Rodgers, but it couldn't have been further from the truth. They haven't won a game since then. The defense, I think, might be fair to say that they've gotten worse, or people have realized that maybe they're not as cut out as a top 10 defense, top 5 to 7 defense as maybe everybody thought or expected, especially with the kind of players that they have. It's pretty mind-boggling how they're not playing a little bit better. The Jets fall to 2-6 and now are tied for last in the division with the New England Patriots also at 2-6. It's New England's first win at home since the 7th week of last season, and that's been over a year ago since winning in Foxborough. And the Jets last year, after 8 games, mind you, were 4-4 compared to this year now being 2-6. 1 year with Aaron Rodgers, Hall of Fame quarterback, one of the best quarterbacks of our generation, and last year 4-4, a better record, but with Zach Wilson, right? Try and make sense of that, right? It doesn't make sense, because this Jets team, it's just so, I don't even really know why or how this Jets team can just drop these games. I guess I'm just failing to accept the fact that it's hard for me to accept the fact that just Rodgers isn't good enough. And I know he's older, and I know one of the Patriots defensive lineman. Forgive me, I don't know his first name, but I think his last name is Godcho. He mentioned how just Aaron Rodgers doesn't look the same, and I think that's just all evidence and just the last thing you need to hear when players, maybe he's the only one, but I don't know that. Maybe he's just one of a few that thought Aaron Rodgers just doesn't look the same out there. He said along the lines of that he felt that he was actually able to go and catch up to Aaron Rodgers, where a few years ago that was never going to be the case. And that you could say has limited Aaron Rodgers' game, the mobility, the escaped aspect. It's always easier, obviously, to tackle a immovable object than it is trying to chase someone back there around for multiple seconds just for the coverage to break down and whatnot. And you guys know how the story goes. But I don't know. It's just going back to the point that we made a while ago where Robert Saleh was fired. I just felt that it was too impulsive, these moves by the Jets. It was just too sudden where you fire the head coach, you take away the play calling responsibilities from Nathaniel Hackett, you trade for Davante Adams. Everything was just coming quickly, trying to piece it together. It was so sporadic, it was so sudden, so impulsive that I just felt that you can't have a steady sort of disciplined approach to these games, like a concentrated effort to go and try to win these games when you have new players coming in, the coach is now gone. Some players were pretty confused with the coach leaving. Not that they don't like Jeff Ulbrich or anything like that, but it just felt unnecessary. And the whole narrative around this Jets team has been that they're going all in this year, and I don't know, the pressure might have gone to them, or they were just never really going to be that good with Aaron Rodgers, or they just never thought the rest of the supporting cast was going to be this far off. It's either one of those two. I'm just confused, honestly, of how the Jets just haven't been able to piece it together. I just go back to the fact that they fired Robert Saleh. I think at that point, it all becomes very disjointed to me when you fire the head coach and try to piece this thing together. I really didn't like that move, so I think that's really one of the main reasons why. And you look at this game, Rodgers, 233 yards, 2 touchdowns. Breece Hall, 16 carries for 80 yards. Garrett Wilson, 5 receptions, 113 yards. Davante Adams, I guess technically a better game because he had more receptions and more yards than last week. But last week he had 3 receptions for 30-something yards. Now this week he had 4 for 54. It's odd how it's just not coming together right now. And a lot of people point to this offense just being so archaic, so just vanilla, just bland, just no motion, no deception. It's just very clear-cut, very easy for opposing defenses to try and attack this offense. And, I don't really dive into, dissecting offenses or dissecting defenses along that sort of stuff and the motions and everything like that. But it is something that I think has followed Aaron Rodgers for a while now, that he likes this style of offense, that this is the way he likes things. And if you want to get the best out of him, you usually fall in line with this offense, right? You go with what makes him more comfortable and everything like that. But that could also be something that's just not working out in this day and age, not having that motion, not having all the bells and whistles and things like that, right? It makes it a lot easier for defenses nowadays, especially when everyone's pretty much game planning for that. And when one week you don't see it, it comes to a bit of a surprise on how maybe easy it becomes, right? With everything being so clear cut and you're not really confused as to what you're seeing. So that's one thing. And, in this game, looking at it and how it all kind of played out, the Patriots took the lead early in this game with a 10-play drive to go up 7-0. Then the Jets responded right after that with their own touchdown to Tyler Conklin. Then New York kind of got into a groove a little bit. They scored on their following drive as well. And after forcing New England to punt as well, they went into halftime at 13-7. Then the second half didn't really feel like anything shifted, but the Patriots forced the Jets to punt after 3 plays, and they also scored a touchdown to now take the lead after Greg Zuerlein missed the extra point in their previous touchdown. Now the Patriots lead 13-14, and after the Jets had a field goal to go back up 16-14, they missed their following field goal after that. And of course, like things go, the Patriots then make their next one and they go up 16-17. But fortunately for the Jets, they would go on to score a touchdown and make it 22-17 with 2 minutes and 57 seconds left, which that is a lot of time. That is a lot of time for any offense, right? If you're going to try and, score a touchdown to at least push it to overtime or make it close towards the end of the game, that's plenty of time. I don't know how many timeouts the Patriots had, but mind you, this is a Patriots team that, Drake May was already out at this point. He wasn't coming back. They brought in Jacoby Brissett, who they benched for Drake May to come back. So he's the one leading this drive. So you're thinking, the Jets defense, it hasn't looked good the last couple weeks. You got to at least give us this, right? You're thinking, you got to at least give us this drive, this sequence of plays where you just shut down this Patriots defense. We get out of here because you guys play better. You shut down any sort of comeback effort. But it didn't play like that at all, because after, the Jets went up 22-17 with about 3 minutes left, they would throw away the game basically by allowing a 12-play drive of 70 yards for a touchdown and basically no time left after that. And the Patriots go up 25-22 after they also get a 2-point conversion. So they orchestrate such a beautiful drive to end this game and just really stick it to the Patriots that, this defense isn't really that good. We just put together a 12-play drive with our backup quarterback, 70 yards, and scored it, and basically leaving the Jets with no time to do anything, even though they needed a field goal. They couldn't do anything, and they ended up losing 25-22. And, of course, in hindsight, you look at this game and you think, with the field goal that Greg Zuerlein missed, with the extra point that he missed as well, if everything else plays out exactly the same, but you get those 4 points back, you win this game, and nobody's really freaking out that much today. But, the defense has to be better. The defense just has to be. For Aaron Rodgers to come out afterwards and say that they need to score 30 points a game, and he kind of made it sound a little bit nicer, saying like they're capable of doing that, so they expect that out of themselves. You could also take it in a way that, this defense isn't that good, so we have to score 30 points or else this defense isn't going to stop anybody and hold anybody to less than 30 or hold anybody to around 30 points. We have to score an extra amount of points basically to have a chance to win these games. And, depending on how you take it, that's a way I took it. But I'm sure Rodgers didn't mean to, call out his defense, but it sort of sounded like that when you interpret it a certain way. And, the defense has to make a stop there. There's also too many mistakes in certain situations that you wouldn't expect out of a very veteran-heavy team, especially like penalties, allowing too many third down conversions as well. The connection with Adams just hasn't really been there also. And outside of that, every statistical category was pretty much even. And the Jets lost just the biggest moments in this game for me because, at this point, when you're 2-6 and, the third down conversions are what they were compared to the Jets, it was pretty lopsided, I want to say. The third down conversions were 7 of 15, the Patriots were on the day, and the Jets were 4 of 10. So allowing about half of the third down conversions to this Patriots team isn't winning football, isn't a defense that lives up to the task of being a Super Bowl contender. And now, I'll just float this thought out there for just discussion out there, I guess I would say. With the trade deadline coming up, they'll never admit it. The Jets will never admit that they're punting away this season now. But you're sitting at 2-6. Your future is not really too clear, especially with all the picks and stuff that you've traded away. Is it so crazy to think about trading Hassan Reddick? You haven't really signed him to an extended deal. You've only really restructured his contract. So is that something you entertain? I know there was trade talks with Garrett Wilson. That's the last person you want to trade, but I don't think it's so crazy with how bad the season has gone. I don't think it's too crazy, like I said, to explore those options to at least get something back on your future so you're not really starting from ground zero and you're starting probably without a quarterback. You'll have Garrett Wilson, but everything else might, Devontae Adams, what's going to happen with him, other pieces, the offensive line and things like that, the coach you have to find. It's going to be a long, treacherous rebuild for this Jets team. I don't know if it's too insane to actually think about trading a piece or two here to kind of save the future. I don't know. I feel like at 2-6, I might just be being too pessimistic about it. Maybe they're not going to win like the next 8 or 7 games, but I don't know. It is something I feel like becomes a reality now because this game was so must win. You don't want to face these questions, obviously, but now after losing a game like that, it's hard to think that you haven't hit rock bottom. So you have to, I think now, logically think of all your options going forward. And, it's the reality of it now. They're not a Super Bowl contender. They're not probably going to make the playoffs. So for a year that everybody had such high hopes for right away without actually seeing it on the field, I guess just goes to show football, you got to go play it out there. You got to see it for a couple weeks before you can make a real determination on it. And the Jets have shown us that they've fallen short of all these expectations, unfortunately. So I don't like saying it because I wanted this to work out for Rodgers and Devontae Adams just as a personal fan. But, we got to keep it honest, right? They're 2-6. They're not that good. So with that being the case, we'll move on to the last couple games that we have on here. 2 last recaps. The Browns game over the Ravens. A surprising result there for the Browns. A Browns team led by Jameis Winston. We're going to go into that, what we saw out of that game, and whether or not we have to worry about the Ravens defense going forward. So we'll address that when we return. You're listening to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Back here on the show here quickly to get to these last couple recaps here on today's episode. We had to mention the Browns beating the Baltimore Ravens. Each week in the NFL, there's at least, I feel like, 2 surprises that you don't really think are possible, honestly, but this one was one of them. This one fits the bill with the Browns defeating the Ravens 29-24 in Jameis Winston's first start, and also Ken Dorsey's, their offensive coordinator, his first time as the official play caller after Kevin Stefanski gave him the play calling duties. He relinquished them so Ken Dorsey would take them. And, all of those factors, Jameis, Ken Dorsey, they all aced their first test. The hardest first test you could ever face, right, with the Baltimore Ravens coming into your home stadium on the win streak that they were on. To put on this performance was, again, not an understatement on how just unbelievable this was. I did not think the Ravens were going to lose and, snap their 5-game win streak to the Cleveland Browns. They only get their second win of the season. To have it against the Baltimore Ravens now kind of tacks on to these losses that the Ravens have had. The first one to the Chiefs, not a bad loss, obviously, but then you have the losses to Las Vegas and Baltimore. That was pretty ugly because you gave up a comeback. And this one as well for a Browns team that had so many uncertainties, that was pretty down from Deshaun Watson and his injury and the fact that they were 1-6. To allow yourself to lose this game ultimately, those are bad losses on the record for the Ravens for how good they are. I think we have to bring up the defense a little bit, and we'll talk about them a little bit more going forward. But to that, to the fact here, actually, on Jameis Winston first, this is his first start since September 25th of 2022. It's the first time this year Cleveland has scored over 20 points, and Winston, just in one game, with the Cleveland Browns has put up over 300 yards passing, whereas Deshaun Watson, that's always going to be the comparison, in 19 games with the Browns has still yet to throw for over 300 yards. And this offense, completely night and day. I guess you could also say that maybe Ken Dorsey had something to do with that. That's something I guess you could use as an excuse, but I don't think that's the whole story, obviously. But the Baltimore Ravens defense, they were without Marlon Humphrey, without Nate Wiggins. Michael Pierce, he left the game in the second quarter with a calf injury on defense. He's also their nose tackle. So, those are big pieces that you're missing, right? Especially for a pass defense that's not very good to begin with. But still, this Browns team was, bottom of the barrel, right? We're talking about down there with the Panthers, and that's pretty much it, right? Down there with the Panthers on how bad this season was going for them. Despite them having great players, the season, the kind of play that we've seen, was not very good at all. So for this Ravens team to be down, I know, 3 starters basically for this game, I don't think that's much of an excuse, because I think the talent level, the way that the Ravens have been playing, is that much better that I felt they could overcome these injuries, but apparently not. And the way that this game played out was very exciting, because Cleveland, right out of the gate, stopped Baltimore on a 4th down conversion to start the game, and they got a field goal out of it, so they led 3-0. After Baltimore made it 3-3, it stayed that way until it was 6-3, and Kyle Hamilton strip-sacked Jameis Winston at that point when it was 6-3, and it led to Baltimore scoring off of that drive, scoring a touchdown, and now they led 6-10 going into halftime. And the second half was just as exciting. It was a bit more back and forth because of the fact that the score got up to 20-17, and then it's kind of started to turn a little bit when Justin Tucker missed a field goal, and the Ravens, instead of tying the game, they kept it at 20-17. Cleveland tacked on another field goal. They go up by 6 points, but Baltimore would not go down without a fight, and they went 91 yards on 6 plays to score a touchdown that many might have thought was probably the ending of this game. It was 23-24, but Cleveland, not quitting, having Jameis Winston as their quarterback, the ultimate motivator, responded once again with their own 9-play, 69-yard drive that is capped off with Cedric Tillman's second touchdown of the game to go up 29-24 with 59 seconds left. I have to add that during this drive, the play that Cedric Tillman scored on, his second touchdown, the play before that, like literally the play right before the touchdown, Jameis threw a dart right to Kyle Hamilton's chest, and he sort of bobbled it, fumbled it, couldn't just corral it while it was thrown right at him, and he dropped the game-sealing interception. And while it was a crushing blow, obviously for the Ravens, but still, I don't really think they were thinking we're going to lose because of this drop. They probably still felt pretty comfortable, but the fact that the very next play, they throw a deep touchdown over the middle on a post route to Cedric Tillman was just such a gut punch to this team, because this game should have been over, right, if they just catch that interception. But, ultimately didn't pan out that way. But with 59 seconds left, the Ravens got pretty close to the end zone. They had 2 shots at the end zone where Lamar threw one to Zay Flowers. It kind of went over his head. And then the last one just kind of went out of bounds. And that was pretty much the ball game. The Browns hold on there in the end, riding their defense that was playing very well the entire game. It was the lowest rushing total, I believe, that they held Derrick Henry and the Baltimore Ravens just offense, just in terms of what Derrick Henry was able to produce in this game. And, just looking at the stats really quick here, and I have to bring up Jameis Winston, of course, just because he is part of this story. First, for the Baltimore Ravens side, Lamar almost threw for 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. Derrick only ran for 73 yards, like I said, so definitely his lowest rushing total of the year. He did score a touchdown. Zay Flowers had another good game with 7 receptions for 115, but it ultimately did not prove to be enough because of this man right here. Jameis Winston, 334 yards, 3 touchdowns, threw the ball 41 times, and came away with a victory. Nick Chubb added 52 rushing yards. No rushing touchdowns for the Browns in this game, but Cedric Tillman, huge game for him. 7 receptions, 99 yards, 2 touchdowns. Elijah Moore also 8 receptions for 85 yards, and David Njoku and Jerry Jeudy also tagging on some great contributions as well. And for me, yes, it's an awesome win for Cleveland that I still believe that they've pretty much punted on this year, but it does feel too late for them. This win could have been like a game-changing, kind of motivating victory to attack the rest of the season, but I still don't think they're really there. When you trade away a guy, like if they still had Amari Cooper, maybe I would be more inclined to believe that, but without Amari, I would find that very hard to believe that now they're going to turn the season around and try and make the playoffs. Watch me be wrong about that, but I'm pretty certain that they're not really going to be pushing for a playoff spot, really. But also because they have the toughest schedule this year on paper. And as for the Baltimore Ravens, the defense continues to struggle, especially against the pass. They gave up 8 of 15 third down conversions to a team that ranked dead last in the NFL on converting on third downs. The Browns were only converting on 23% of their third downs, and against the Ravens, they converted on over 50%. I don't care who the quarterback is. I don't care who the play caller is. If your defense is really that good, you're going up against a team that's last in converting third downs. At most, I could give you 40 or 30%. At most 40. But to give up over 50, that's too much. Is for any team to give up over 50% on third down conversions. It's really hard to win that way, especially when your defense is struggling in the secondary, especially. Also, with the Ravens, credit to Cleveland for their defensive performance, but the Ravens also only converted on 20% of their third downs in this game. They were 2 of 10, so it's like they almost switched. The third down conversions that we usually see for the Ravens went to the Browns, and the Browns' third down conversion, usually that we see them around 20-23% was what the Ravens generated in this game. So very odd as well. Derrick Henry didn't really see too much action. They passed a lot in this game, which I wasn't that big of a fan of also. But the Ravens also won the turnover battle, and it definitely could have been more. But I feel like with this Ravens team, the fact that the offense kind of became a little bit pass happy in this game, which I didn't like. I don't know. I'm not going to say Derek's hurt or anything, but he should have seen the ball a little bit more, I believe. That's just my opinion, but I feel like this defense needs a lot of help for the Ravens. They need this offense to score 24, 23 plus points because of the fact that they've been in so many high-scoring games. Could you imagine if the offense would have had like an off day and they might have only scored like 17 or 16 points for a week or two, that this Ravens team would still be around 500. This defense needs one or more turnovers, to get those lopsided victories. We saw it with Tampa Bay. They got a couple picks off of Baker, but even that was only a 10-point game. The turnovers they generated against Dak, that still was only a 3-point game. And then you look at their other high-scoring games, Washington, Cincinnati, Dallas. They were all close games. Baltimore's defense allowed no fewer than 23 points in all of those games. So in any game, Baltimore, their offense seems to have at least 24 points to be capable or feel safe that this Ravens defense isn't going to give up more than that, because they've pretty much given that in all of their games except one against the Browns and against the Bills, where they just dominated them. Or not the Browns, but the Bills, basically. So, it's not anything that we're freaking out like the Ravens are frauds or anything, but it is something to pinpoint, to at least consider it being the main point of emphasis the next couple weeks going forward, right? We have to fix this, because a championship level team offense like the Ravens have can't be giving up these late quarter comebacks, these scores at the end of the game, not being able to close teams out. You brought Derrick Henry in to close these games out because you felt your defense was a little bit better. They still have good players. They just have to play up more to their ceiling, I would say, because I think they've allowed like 17 or 14 fourth quarter touchdowns, and that's the most in the NFL by far compared to the 6. That's the next highest up. So that's obviously a problem. This pass defense, once their starters come back, it is going to be better. So you have that to look forward to, but it is something that we just have to put a marker on just for now, because again, if you're going to win the Super Bowl, if we're going to hold you to that high of regard, that's not a stat that you can have associated with you and your defense. So the Browns still, great win for them. Jameis, great to see him, winning this game as well. Just for his story and everything like that, I thought it was cool to see. But a surprise victory for the Browns, but not as big as a surprise as this last segment where the Commanders stole the show, stole the weekend with their Hail Mary victory over the Chicago Bears. It was only 18-15, but that last play stole the show. We're going to talk about it a little bit here to end today's show when we return after our last break. Thank you guys for joining me here on this last segment here on the Chip Shot Football Podcast to discuss, of course, we had to bring it on here, the Commanders win over the Chicago Bears. Jaden Daniels in this game was able to be active for this game after suffering that rib injury last week against the Carolina Panthers, and there was some questions about whether or not he was going to be able to go, but he was active for this game in a matchup between the number 1 and number 2 overall pick in this year's draft. Obviously, Caleb Williams at number 1 and Jaden Daniels himself at number 2. Washington, overall, just won on a miraculous Hail Mary touchdown to give them the lead 18-15 over the Chicago Bears. The Bears, unfortunately, dropped to 4-3, while the Commanders go to 6-2. This was the 6th matchup of rookie quarterbacks taken with the first 2 picks in the NFL draft in NFL history. Chicago was on a 3-game winning streak leading up until this game, but of course, obviously, that now ends and they go to 4-3. And Washington had 4 field goals going into the fourth quarter in this game, not really suggesting that they deserved to win this game like a lot of people would put it. But Chicago also, just highlighting the lack of offense, the lack of excitement in this game, only had 172 yards of offense before the fourth quarter as well. So it was a very grimy, very just nasty game where the defenses were showing out. It was just field goal after field goal after field goal. And, the first touchdown didn't come until the third quarter. And that's where we're going to start on this recap here. Because Chicago's 5 drives in the first half included 4 punts and 1 turnover on downs, while Washington converted 3 of their 5 drives in the first half into field goals. So they led 9-0, and 4 out of the first 5 drives in the third quarter for both teams were punts before the first touchdown of the game came from DeAndre Swift on that 56-yard touchdown. That gave the lead to the Chicago Bears, and that took them that made the score 12-7, after, the Commanders had 4 field goals. The Bears cut it down a little bit to 12-7, and after a missed field goal by Washington, that would have made it 15-7 7, obviously, Chicago orchestrated a 9-play, 84-yard drive that they botched at the goal line with such a dumb, unnecessary play to an offensive lineman, I think he was, or he was some sort of lineman that they had in as fullback. Caleb tried to hand him the ball, and it hit his chest pretty much, and he fumbled it right as he, went up to the line of scrimmage, and it was recovered by the Commanders. So for what would have been definitely the lead at this point for the Commanders, they would have put them up 14 to 12 basically, but they botched that opportunity, and it wasn't until their next drive that they did finally score after another impressive drive, 10 plays, 62 yards, and a touchdown to Roschon Johnson, plus the 2-point conversion, put the Chicago Bears up now for real, 15 to 12. And, then of course the Hail Mary drive comes, and Jaden Daniels was able to get close enough with those 2 completions to Zach Ertz and Terry McLaurin, which I'm sure if you guys have seen, people are freaking out about. But, the Hail Mary was what it was. Apart from being a great throw from Jaden Daniels, obviously, the most, you guys have probably seen, those instant karma moments anywhere on social media, right? Where somebody does something, they think they've gotten away with it, and then something happens to them immediately right after to kind of show that karma moment. Tyreek Stevenson, the most insane just chain of events that I've ever seen for that to end up happening, right? Because watching Tyreek Stevenson, the play that Terry caught that out route, he was already talking to, you would assume, the Commanders fans, right? Kind of taunting them, kind of believing he won this game before, obviously, the Hail Mary, right? He was already taunting the fans. Then on the Hail Mary drive, while everybody was running down, he continued to taunt them, kind of have his back to the play, not even really knowing what was going on, until he finally turns around and realizes, shoot, I got to run over here. He runs over to the pile where the ball is going to be thrown, and he gets there a little late. He gets his hand on the football, actually. He jumps up above everybody, but instead of kind of knocking it down, he sort of just kind of keeps his hand up, and it tips it up, and because of that, it kind of flies over everybody, just perfectly for Noah Brown that's just sitting there waiting in the end zone. He catches it, obviously, and they win the game. They win the game on that Hail Mary drive. I was watching it with some of my buddies. We all went crazy for that to happen. Of course, we didn't know the whole buildup of it with Tyreek Stevenson and everything, but for a ball to be, dropped into the pile, be tipped up over everybody, and Noah Brown just sitting there catching it seems to be the most lucky thing to ever happen, right? But looking at how everything played out and how we're just gonna break it down real quick with the last drive overall, because the first couple completions to one of them was an incomplete to Zach Ertz, right? That started this last drive for the Commanders. That one was incomplete. Then Jaden Daniels threw another completion to Zach Ertz. This time it was actually complete to Zach. And there was about 12 seconds left, I want to say, when Jaden threw that out route to Terry McLaurin. And I think at that point, there wasn't too much time left. There was around 6, maybe 7 seconds where Terry quickly goes to that out route and they get closer. I want to say 13 yards closer off of that reception. So that puts him in a good amount of range for Jaden Daniels to get close enough to the end zone, right? You might think that doesn't make a difference, right? They were going to run the Hail Mary anyway. That's wrong, because if they don't complete this pass and the Chicago Bears actually defend the boundary, because with about 6 to 7 seconds left in this game, that if the Commanders throw it into the middle of the field, they're not going to have enough time to, snap the ball, have the clock stop running, and throw it into the middle of the field. That's going to take probably at least 3 seconds, maybe 4 by the time, how far you go. And if you go far enough to get in range for a Hail Mary, you're not going to have enough time to get up, spike it, and get everybody set. So you knew that they weren't going to throw it into the middle of the field. So usually you defend the boundaries, right? Not even give them the option to throw that quick out route to get into Hail Mary range. The Bears didn't do that. They just sat back and gave that up willingly. So with that being the case, now the Commanders are in Hail Mary range, right? Still not the likeliest of plays to happen. All right, so the Commanders, go through the Hail Mary thing. Jaden Daniels buys himself some time. The Bears are only rushing 3. And you had TJ Edwards there that was sort of kind of like a spy on Jaden Daniels. He wasn't really doing much. He was just kind of standing there. But ultimately, they were rushing 4, maybe 3. So the offensive line gave Jaden Daniels enough time to have everybody go down there. And Jaden Daniels throws the bomb up there. And from what I've heard, from what I've, kind of learned from listening to former players, is that in these situations, right, you obviously practice it each and every week, and usually there's guys boxing certain guys out. You have assignments, you have roles to do on Hail Mary plays, right? It's not just luck. Or I guess it's luck in a way that if you do everything right and somebody just goes up above everybody and mosses everybody, then you kind of give it up to him, tip your hat, and say, all right, that was a little bit of a miraculous catch, right? But in this situation where you have Tyreek Stevenson over here not following his assignment or not really being fully locked in, and also once he returns to the play, everything is just kind of thrown out of order. You have Tyreek Stevenson just trying to go up, trying to do something with the ball. I don't know if he was trying to knock it down, but like I said, he kind of just flips it over. It ends up lifting up over everybody. Nobody's boxing out Noah Brown. No one's lined up over Noah Brown. Everyone's kind of just in front of Noah Brown and a couple of other Washington players. So if anybody else would have hit it up, there was still a chance because nobody was lined up or covering those guys behind them. There should never be players from the opposing team that's trying to complete the Hail Mary. They should never be the furthest ones into the end zone, right? They should never be the furthest ones, like I said, into the end zone. There should always be Bears players, furthest back into the end zone. There should be nobody behind those Bears players, right? And all the Bears players just kind of swarmed to the football once it was going to drop, looking at the trajectory of it. Nobody was boxing out Noah Brown. And, of course, like it all played out, the ball just ends up going to him and they lose the game. Still miraculous that it all happens like that, but there are certain mistakes, coaching errors here in this sequence of events that really you can point to the Bears for having a lapse. They should have won this game. I like the plays that I saw out of Caleb late in the game, because to start the game, it really didn't look great. But the last couple drives looked pretty solid. He completed some good throws and whatnot. But it's a shame that it kind of got thrown away from, not calling a timeout or stopping them from throwing it to Terry McLaurin or knowing where you were supposed to be on the Hail Mary. All those little things that nobody, again, really pays attention to, because you just think a Hail Mary, we're just going to throw it up there. And like the title suggests, it's just a prayer. But you have these protocols, these assignments, you go over it in practice so you're not on the wrong end of looking kind of dumb when this Hail Mary plays against your favor. And that's exactly how the Bears looked. And I would just chalk it up to a coaching mistake. Matt Eberflus has been questioned a little bit, especially with what he said after the game. How he said the Terry McLaurin catch didn't really matter. It did, because they wouldn't have thrown the Hail Mary anyway if he didn't catch that ball. So it just shows, I think, the Bears' still biggest problem, which to me would be the coaching, because they have the players, they have everything. I just feel like they need some direction, and whether or not that's Matt Eberflus or Luke Waldron, that's a different discussion, not for this episode. But yeah, it was a miraculous play. Washington steals the show. The legend of Jaden Daniels grows even more with this Hail Mary, so that was awesome to see. But definitely the Bears will be kicking themselves. Not looking forward to that next film session, I'm sure, when all these problems are going to be pointed out. But ultimately, the Commanders win, and I think that's a great way to end the show, on such a awesome play that we saw yesterday to wrap up Week 8. So that'll do it for today's show. Thank you guys for joining me. Please remember to like, follow, and subscribe to the Chip Shot Football Podcast, as well as checking out the network and following the network on all forms of social media, and checking out more content around the Chip Shot Football Podcast on both YouTube channels, where there's a lot more variety of content and coverage around the NFL in a bunch of different ways. And also, as a final reminder, tune in every weekday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time for more NFL coverage, discussions, recaps, everything around the NFL with me, Manny Maradiaga, as your host. Thanking you for joining me, and I'll see you guys back here again tomorrow to recap Monday Night Football.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit.